Greetings, everyone. This is Rock from Spock Adventure with the second part of this week's weekly comic book roundup. We'll be focusing on the last Absolute Carnage tie-ins, some Avengers-related titles, and a few DC books. So let's get started, shall we? We're going to kick things off with Venom number 20. Which is one of two books that serves as something of an epilogue to Absolute Carnage. So, at the end of Absolute Carnage, Venom killed Carnage, but in doing so, he did kind of sort of free Null, who is now on his way to Earth. So, oops. But he did so to save Dylan, his son. So, the issue begins. Alright, first off, earlier in the earlier Venom tie-ins to Absolute Carnage, the maker, the Ultimate Universe version of Reed Richards, had been working with excuse me, had been working with Venom, and it's something he'd been working with, and that's actually an alliance that had been going on for a while. So, the first goodly portion of the issue is Reed is the maker reporting to someone. Says, Eddie Brock saved the world. Again. Which, for me and my extended plans, means one thing and one thing only. Failure. Absolute failure. The monster known as Carnage is dead, along with the codex symbols contained within him, and the machine I created to obtain them. The codices I had hoped to farm for Project Oversight have been absorbed by Venom. A great loss, to be sure. But the event has not been without its discoveries. Reviewing the remote security footage around the warehouse, I've discovered some rather interesting developments. Dylan Brock, it would appear, merits further investigation. But Reed goes on to explain that when pressed by the person he's reporting to, that he has surmised that Dylan is a kind of living codex. Essentially a piece of the original alien combined with a living human fetus. And it turns out that during the research that Maker conducted, he's starting to believe that the Clintar do not reproduce at random. It's triggered by a shared sense of oncoming danger that would require them to bolster their numbers. And so we get a breakdown of things. Just before Thanos began his reign against the universe in search of the Infinity Stones, the Carnage Studio was produced. Then we had Toxin, born shortly before the Avengers disassembled. Same with Scorn and Raze, both of whom were spawned before cataclysmic events. Scorn for the so-called Chaos War, and Raze before the events of the Second Superhuman Civil War. And then he presumes that Sleeper was born as a direct pre-response to the awakening of the Grendel Dragon and rebirth of Cletus Cassidy. He also, Maker further adds that it's his. He thinks that since the Venom Studio has been away from the rest of the Clintar for so long, it's no longer part of the Clintar hive mind. So he's become a part of Earth's collective. And the question kind of begs the question, what kind of danger is Earth in? This is going to create Dylan Brock. Now, potentially speaking, that could be Null. So, Dylan and Eddie have a little bit of heart-to-heart. About the fact that Eddie's Dylan's father, not his brother. And that in fact Dylan was raised by Eddie's father. So that he didn't know about Dylan. So, you know. But and while they do say, you know, hey, you know, we're together, you know, we're family, no more secrets. Dylan's going to keep his abilities a secret, though. And then Dylan asks about his mother, and Eddie says, "Yeah, he'll tell her. He'll tell him about her." Turns out, however, that the Maker has been working on experiments to open a dimensional rift back to the Ultimate Universe. Experiments in which he has failed. The strain of multiple rift travels is too much for the human mind and body, even for someone such as him. However, in his last attempt, something did come through. It may be severely damaged, but the ultimate version of the Venom symbiote is still very much intact. He's thinking that from the looks of things, maybe these are actually designed for dimensional travel. And the people he's talking to rightfully guess that if the Maker can repair the symbiote, the artificial symbiote, then he would be able to transverse the rift without injury or harm to his psyche. And we discover that it's the Council of Reeds that he's talking to. The Council of Reeds being, well, a group of multiversal versions of Reed Richards. They, I don't want to call them villains, but they're like, just barely not. But his plan is to basically return to his Earth of origin and, well, bring it back. Interesting. Okay. And that's where the issue ends. The letters page is also amusing. And that's where the issue ends. Moving on to Scream, Curse of Carnage, #1. So, Scream, Andy Bent and the Scream symbiote, teamed up with the rest of the heroes in fighting Carnage and his horde. And Andy has decided to keep the Scream symbiote. So we begin in Lower Manhattan. A couple of cops are by one of the bridges, and they found something. Yeah, something is the best way to describe that. We catch up with Andy, who is monologuing to her, and having a bit of an internal monologue, explaining who she is, and that Flash Thompson was her gym coach, and he was also Venom at the time, and now she's another symbiote in her life. And Scream is trying to talk to her, but she's kind of but Andy's trying to block her out. We get a little bit of a flashback to her childhood. Turns out that Andy's mom left Andy and her father. And some of the kids she went to middle school with weren't exactly understanding about this. So her father does his best to comfort her, and say, hey, it's not your fault your mother left. Okay, she felt there was something missing, and she needed to go and find it. She needed, find herself. Well, Andy is at a homeless shelter, which turns out to be none other than Feast Shelter, as administered by none other than May Parker. So, later on, she's at a metal club, going through the pit. And some jerk tries to push her out of the way, and she pops him one, leaves. In the alleyway outside, the guy attempts to mug her, and, she turns into a scream and beats the crap out of all of them. However, part of the symbiote does drip from Andy's hand into the Hudson, where it turns out there are things beneath. And the symbiote mixes with some of these things. And they come out of the sewer right in front of Andy, and so she once again screams up, kills the things off, and just wonders what the hell they are. The creatures look like pieces of corpses stuck together. And the symbiote portion, however, manages to get off her foot and go back into the sewers and then into the river. Days later, a woman comes and finds her and claiming to be Andy's mother, and then proves it. And while Andy and her mother embrace for the first time in years, the symbiote is not happy. Is afraid that once again it'll be left. One thing to keep in mind is that for a very long while, the symbiote basically just wrapped itself around the corpse of Donna Diego, its original host, and animated the corpse. And that's it for issue 1 of Scream, Curse of Carnage, which we will be following. Moving on to Avengers number 26. First of 2 Avengers books Avengers 2 issues of Avengers this week. Now, Avengers number 26 is actually a holdover from last week, as it arrived at the shop I frequent after Wednesday. So, oops. All right, so this issue is one of the origin issues of the Avengers 1 million. In this case, Starbrand. So we get what's currently said to be the history of the Marvel Earth. "66 million years ago, an asteroid hit the Earth, wiping out most of the dinosaurs. Turns out the asteroid was actually summoned by the Earth, and the infection that the dying Celestial left here. Turns out that in the asteroid was the Starbrand, which promptly bonded itself to a T-Rex, which gives us the most amazingly, ridiculously awesome thing I've seen in a long time. Yes, the first superhero of Earth was a friggin' cosmically powered T-Rex. That's not the most awesome thing in quite some time. I mean, so anyway, 65 million years later. Keep in mind we were just at 66 million years ago. Now we're at 1 million years ago. Or so. Two cavemen actually kind of reminded me of Ghost Rider, the 1 million BC Ghost Rider. In that he was a rarity in his tribe as being able to speak. Basically, he was more Homo sapien than our genetic precursors, as are these two men. Both from different tribes, and both left their tribes knowing, yeah, we were, we were not like the rest of our tribes. Anyways, they're attacked by deviants, and they manage to stop them. They continue on, and something comes up from the floor of the forest they're in, and they discover one of the two, Brick, dies. Vin, however, discovers the star-branded T-Rex underneath. When he touches the brand, it transfers to him. And eventually makes his way to the sacred mountain of the Panther tribe in what would end up becoming Wakanda. Ghost Rider, Iron Fist, Agamotto, the first Black Panther, Odin, and the first Phoenix are all there. And Phoenix reads his mind a bit to help Black Panther understand who Starbrand is. And that is where the issue ends. Moving on to this week's issue of Avengers. Avengers number 27. So, where we left off. Let's see. Ghost Rider's car had been exorcised of the malevolent force within it, his Uncle Eli. I think a combination. Actually, I think it was a combination of his Uncle Eli and Cosmic Ghost Rider. But yeah. Tony Stark got trapped in the past, the far-flung past. So, we begin 6 days ago in Shi'ar-controlled space, the outskirts of the Raven Star Galaxy, at Watchroyd Delta. And Magister Gladiator is there about an explosive incident that occurred inside the prison. A broodling was found, but makes some threats to Gladiator before, well, being killed. And so Gladiator goes to investigate things on his own, and Day says, "Hey, if you don't hear from me after so long, call." Turns out, Alpha Flight. And so a day later at Avengers Mountain, turns out the Avengers are getting ready to go into space. Blade is not looking forward to this. He's a vampire hunter, not an astronaut. Ghost Rider is super psyched because it's either have a good freak out or have a bad freak out. But, I mean, he's going into space. Also joining them is Black Widow. Black Panther is staying behind to look into Iron Man's disappearance. And She-Hulk is rocking a new costume, which was designed by her and Black Panther to harness her gamma emissions and help prevent any unwanted explosions. However, she's lost in thought about the Starbrand itself. So anyways, the Avengers go off into space. And we cut to now. The ship is being held in place with magnetic webs in the Raven Star Maximum Security Prison Galaxy, which is designed and managed by the Shi'ar Imperium. Consists of 110 million artificial stars, 40 million prefabricated planets, and 8 quadrillion prisoners. So Cap is filling out the log. It's pointing that it's been 5 days since they entered the prison, since the mission went to hell. They've been shipwrecked for 3 days, leaking oxygen with their power almost completely depleted. There's not enough juice left to escape the webs that are holding the prisoners set up to snare ships. The scavengers keep on showing up, with their ranks keep on dwindling. Captain Marvel's disappeared the previous day to look for another ship. And some team members were lost during a breach caused by something that happened to Thor, who's getting worse every day, talking to his hammer, which is the only thing that keeps him calm. Turns out, Thor has turned into a broodling. And the main thing about it, talking to his hammer, is that if he can still hold the hammer, he's still Thor. And She-Hulk's outside taking care of other brood that are on the hull. And thinking to herself, yesterday's War Scrolls and Dire Race, and the day before that it was the Badoon. But then Captain Marvel arrives in the Starjammer. Explaining that it was a hive of flesh-devouring bugs that take up residence inside, that she proceeded to leave. Or at least a ship that once belonged to the Starjammer, so I'll put it that way. Maybe not the Starjammer, but yeah. However, things go bad, and Thor drops his hammer, and he can't pick it back up. Cap tries to give him a pep talk, like, hey, whoa, you're the god of thunder, the All-Father of Asgard. You're stronger than this. And Thor says he's the strongest there is. And he attacks Cap, proclaiming himself to be the strongest brood in the galaxy. Meanwhile, on the other side of the universe, Hellcharger, with Ghost Rider at the wheel, is going through space with Black Widow and Blade in the back seat. Apparently, while Blade may be a daywalker, a red sun can still hurt him. And they're being chased by the Silver Surfer. That is where the issue ends. This will certainly be interesting. Moving on to excuse me, Captain Marvel number 12, also a holdover from last week. Same thing as with Avengers. It just didn't show up at the shop on time. So, where we left off with Captain Marvel, she had managed to... Her life got ruined, and then she managed to unruin it. So, we begin in low Earth orbit, and then moving on to Avengers Mountain. Thor is on ice duty. And he's attacked. The fight rages on from the Arctic. And it's revealed his attacker is none other than Captain Marvel. Their fight rages on from Greenland to Manitoba to Kansas, California, Mexico, the Pacific. And so Carol levels the playing field and is able to zap Thor, and then she arrives on the gray area of the moon, the ruins of New Arctalon, the former home of the Inhumans, and presents Thor's head to Vox Supreme. Last seen in the Death of the Inhuman story. Turns out that she has 16 hours left to kill 5 Avengers. That's where the issue ends. Now moving on to the DC side of things, we'll start things off with Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Infinite Crisis. So Infinite Crisis is generally referred to as the second crisis. The first crisis being, Crisis on Infinite Earths. In Crisis on Infinite Earths, the Anti-Monitor showed up, sort of just, chowing down on all the various universes within the multiverse, and when all the heroes managed to come together, it was too late to do anything to save the multiverse. But they were able. When all was said and done, they defeated the Anti-Monitor, and New Earth was formed. Four survivors from the multiverse went off to a limbo dimension to live out the rest of their days. In Infinite Crisis, well, turns out those four survivors were watched as the world grew darker, and they started to wonder, did they save the right Earth? And so Alexander Luthor of Earth 3 had been secretly manipulating events, had been slipping out of the Paradise dimension to manipulate events in the regular on New Earth. And occasionally he would bring Superboy Prime with him. This would some of the initial plot points were discovered by Ted Kord, the Blue Beetle, and led to his murder at the hands of his former ally Max Lord. Yeah, when all was said and done, the survivors of the first crisis had all died. Lois Lane had died of old age. Well, that's not true. Superboy Prime survived. But he also become a full-fledged villain and was in the custody of the Green Lantern Corps and had killed multiple heroes, including Connor Connell Kent, who was at that point in time Superboy. He had also been instrumental in the death of the Earth 1 Superman. And finally, a combination of the Joker and Lex Luthor killed Alexander Luthor. But yeah, it was not a good time. So we begin with the usual Tempest Fugonaut explanation of Dark Multiverse, and explaining what happened. The first crisis, the second crisis, and how things go differently. So we start off with Blue Beetle being captured by Nomak and brought to Max Lord. And this time, however, Blue Beetle opts, instead of having a defiant moment of, you're just going to have to shoot me, and Max Lord saying, okay, bang. Blue Beetle tricks him. Manages to get free, takes Max's gun, and shoots Max. Then he actually manages to talk Brother Eye into not going into full crisis mode, and takes over as Black King of Checkmate. So weeks later, Booster Gold shows up on the Watchtower. Nobody's heard from Blue Beetle in the last couple of weeks, and he accuses the big three of blowing off Blue Beetle, which they did. And adding that, hey, I almost got blown up here. Okay, I want to know what's happened. So later on, Batman is doing some investigating of his own, and Sasha Bordeaux informs him what's happened. And that they shut down a cabal of major supervillains, as well as another group of supervillains who had not been recruited into the secret society and were initially recruited to act against them. He also managed to prevent Jean Loring from getting access to Eclipso's Black Diamond. And manage to make some inroads with the mystical side of things, prevent a war between Rand and Thanagar. Basically, all of the major things that led up to Infinite Crisis, he stops. And Batman is told of all this, and Batman still says, you're still going to need to answer for the death of Max Lord. And so Beetle's like, that's really where you're going. Fine, okay. Maybe if I do that, maybe perhaps Bruce Wayne should answer for all the crimes that he's committed as Batman. And so Booster Gold manages to track down Beetle. They talk a bit. Booster's not comfortable with everything. I think maybe Ted's went a bit too far with things. They finally managed to track down the figure who Mockingbird was, and checkmate comes upon a massacre. Lex Luthor, dead. Black Adam, torn in half. Deathstroke, dead. And Alexander Luthor stands revealed, alongside Superboy Prime. And so, Alex tells Ted what's up. And Beetle manages to convince Superboy to change sides. However, Alexander saw this coming and ends up killing Earth 1 Superman and Earth 1 Lois. And he further explains that the only reason he picked Superboy Prime to save was because he was, just stupid enough to manipulate. However, then Superboy Prime kills him with his heat vision. And Blue Beetle says, okay, well, we're going to try and make this Earth they can be proud of. And so they're analyzing. And so Beetle takes the machine built from the Anti-Monitor's corpse to the back of the castle. It's analyzing. It turns out the biggest threat is, of course, according to Brother Eye, is the Justice League. And so he figures out a way to do something. And so the Watchtower is attacked. And Superboy Prime shows up at Titan's Tower. And wanting the Titans to resist. Explaining to the Titans that, he's not supposed to hurt any of them. Unless, of course, they resist. And so he says to them, I'm begging you, please resist. Meanwhile, Beetle has basically the Omega Virus take a degree of control and goes after the big three on the remains of the Watchtower. Turns out, though, he's hit them all with a nanovirus, turning them into Omax. Meanwhile, Superboy Prime is massacring the Teen Titans who are standing against him, and then during everything, Booster Gold tries to stop Ted, but Brother Eye takes over and Booster's killed. And the Omax are fighting the superheroes. Brother Eye suggests to Ted that, hey, look, you are emotionally compromised by this. Let me take over. All right, then we can. And Ted does, and it ends with him standing over the dead bodies of numerous heroes, including Robin, I guess Nightwing, Flash, Dr. Midnight, Plastic Man, Wildcat. Oh, there's Nightwing. It looks like there are 2 Robins, but yeah. Others continue to fall from the sky. And he sits on a throne in the castle, saying that Ted sits on a throne in the castle, saying that he knows that a bug can save the world. That's where the issue ends. Next up, for our final book of the week, we've got Basketful of Heads, number 2. So where we left off, the 3 convicts had raided the house of local police chief. And girlfriend of one of the deputies had been hiding. While she's looking around, she finds a rather grisly sight. Someone's removed finger. She grabs an axe from the chief's collection of Viking memorabilia. Holds it up to the convict who's trying to talk to her. But she forces him to have to chase after him. Meanwhile, there's a really bad storm coming. The convict catches up to the girl. First, she cuts off his toes, then some of his fingers, and his head. Thing is, though, his head isn't dead. So she gathers up his head, puts it in a basket, makes her way back towards the house. However, lingers back to the body of the man. Turns out under his prison jumpsuit is a police station badge. There's a Brody Island PD badge. Moving on now to the next chapter of Sea Dogs. In St. Lucia, our 2 would-be saboteurs go to board the HMS Haddock. One of them is now Dr. Barker, ship's surgeon, and Dr. Barker ends up meeting First Lieutenant Carver and Third Lieutenant Reed. Turns out that Carver and Reed were about to see about getting any additional crew from the town. And Reed explains that he makes a very persuasive argument. And so Dr. Barker agrees to join them. And that is where the issue ends. That is also it for this week's roundup. There's not going to be a movie review this week. Might have another video coming though, maybe on Sunday or so. We'll see. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and PayPal can be found in the search box down below. Hit the bell icon to be notified when I put up new content. As always, this is Rock and Spock signing off saying, live long, rock hard. Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours, guys.